Welcome to this comprehensive exploration, where we're going to analyze the story behind one of the most, well, truly enduring figures of the 20th century, Audrey Hepburn.
Right, and we're not just here to list her films.
No, not at all. We're tracing the life of a true cultural phenomenon.
Yeah.
I mean, she was a style icon, an
Yes.
ego winner, and ultimately a dedicated humanitarian whose life was really forged in the trauma of wartime Europe.
That's the key.
Our mission today is a really precise, thorough analysis of what motivated her. We've got a comprehensive collection of sources, and our goal is to trace this highly improbable path she took.
It really was improbable, from European aristocracy and, this wartime suffering all the way to international stardom.
And then concluding with this profoundly meaningful final chapter of global service.
It is so important to understand from the start that her identity was just built on layers of paradox and complexity. She was born Audrey Kathleen Rustin in Ixelles, Brussels, back in May 1929. She held British citizenship her whole life, but she was intrinsically linked to Dutch nobility through her mother, Baroness Ella van Heemstra.
So there was this startling juxtaposition right from the beginning.
Exactly, a sheltered aristocratic upbringing that just dissolved almost instantly into the brutal realities of a world at war.
And before we even jump into the films, the accolades themselves just set the stage for her immense talent.
Oh, absolutely.
She is one of the very few entertainers recognized for competitive wins in all four major categories: the Academy, Emmy, Grammy, and Tony Awards. The competitive EGOT.
And that's the crucial word, isn't it? Competitive.
It is, because so many people get these for lifetime achievement.
Right. But Hepburn earned them. The competitive EGOT is historically so rare because it requires this incredible talent and success across such diverse media: stage, screen, TV, audio.
And her final competitive award, the Grammy, that was posthumous, wasn't it?
It was. For Best Spoken Word Album for Children, for Audrey Hepburn's Enchanted Tales. It cemented this incredibly difficult achievement, and it showed her appeal spanned every single facet of the industry.
The American Film Institute then ranked her as the third greatest female screen legend.
From the classical Hollywood era. It just sealed her legacy.
Okay, let's unpack this. Starting with her earliest years and the difficult and, frankly, politically charged family history she carried.
It's the only place to start.
We're going to proceed chronologically. We'll examine her aristocratic roots, the defining trauma of the war, her incredible cinematic career, and then the critical importance of her final humanitarian chapter.
Which, as you'll see, was inextricably linked to her beginning.
So we start with the family structure. Her mother, Ella van Heemstra, she was undeniably highborn.
She was. A Dutch noblewoman whose father, Baron Arnoud van Heemstra, had been the former mayor of Arnhem and even the governor of Dutch Guiana.
So this was a serious lineage.
Oh, yes. It provided Audrey with an early education just steeped in cultural refinement and European history.
And then you have her father, Joseph Rustin, who introduces these complexities.
He does. He was a British subject, and the sources detail his decision to change his name to Hepburn Rustin, a double-barreled surname.
Why did he do that?
Well, it was based on this mistaken belief that he was descended from James Hepburn, the 4th Earl of Bothwell.
Mary, Queen of Scots' third husband.
The very same. So it reveals this early preoccupation with, let's say, manufactured lineage and prestige, maybe fueled by his marriage into the Dutch aristocracy.
What's genuinely shocking, though, and deeply uncomfortable for those who only know her through that graceful post-war image, is the political environment her parents actively embraced in the mid-1930s.
It's a part of the story that often gets glossed over.
Right. Both Ella and Joseph recruited members and collected substantial donations for the British Union of Fascists, the BUF.
Yes, led by Oswald Mosley. And the sources confirm Ella van Heemstra even traveled to Munich and met Adolf Hitler.
She met Hitler.
She did. And wrote articles for British fascist journals that spoke favorably about his aims and, his charisma, this adherence to fascist ideology. It was common among some European aristocratic circles who feared Bolshevism.
It's just an immense moral contradiction in her history.
It's crucial context for understanding the radical shift that happened in the family just a few years later.
But even before the war, Audrey's own emotional foundation was shattered by personal abandonment.
Her father.
Joseph left the family abruptly in 1935. He just walked out.
He moved to London, got even deeper into his political involvement, and was just gone. Hepburn later said his departure was the most traumatic event of my life.
She said children need two parents. It's just heartbreaking.
It is. That statement just encapsulates the deep emotional scar. It fostered this lifelong feeling of rootlessness and a powerful drive to create stable relationships, even though her own marriages were deeply challenging.
What's maybe even more remarkable is her compassion toward him later in life.
I agree. Despite that profound abandonment, she located him through the Red Cross in the 1960s.
Decades later.
Decades later. And she supported him financially until he died. It shows this extraordinary, almost desperate need for reconciliation.
That difficult personal history was then immediately overshadowed by the start of World War II. After Britain declared war in 1939, her mother made a critical, though ultimately flawed, decision.
She moved Audrey back to the Netherlands, specifically to Arnhem.
The hope was neutrality, right, like in World War I.
Exactly, that the Netherlands would stay safe. But that hope was tragically short-lived. The Germans invaded in May 1940.
And as a British citizen, Audrey was instantly in extreme danger.
Right. This is where her life shifts into a survival narrative. She was at the Arnhem Conservatory studying ballet, but she was forced to assume a pseudonym.
She became Edda van Hemstra.
Yes. Having an English-sounding name was just too dangerous under the occupation. It was a direct threat to her life.
And the occupation itself, it rapidly and fundamentally radicalized her mother's previous political views.
There was a pivotal moment in 1942, the execution of her maternal uncle, Otto van Limburg-Stirum.
He was executed by the Nazis as retaliation for an act of resistance.
That he wasn't even involved in.
Right.
This specific incident was the personal turning point. It completely dissolved her mother's earlier, naive view of Nazism. The reality of arbitrary violence just hit too close to home.
And from that point on, the family became actively involved.
In survival and in supporting the resistance, her half-brother Ian was deported to a German labor camp in Berlin. Her other half-brother Alex was forced into hiding.
And Audrey herself, just a teenager, was forced to confront true atrocity.
She gave this stark, unforgettable quote about it, detailing the violence.
"We saw young men put against the wall and shot. Don't discount anything awful you hear or read about the Nazis. It's worse than you could ever imagine."
And what generates such profound sympathy and connects directly to her later life is her memory of seeing the transportation of Dutch Jews to concentration camps.
She remembered seeing trainloads of Jews being transported, seeing all these faces over the top of the wagon.
But it was the individual detail that truly haunted her. She said, "I remember, very sharply, one little boy standing with his parents on the platform, very pale, very blonde, wearing a coat that was much too big for him, and he stepped on the train. I was a child observing a child."
That image, witnessing child vulnerability during mass suffering.
It became a core engine for everything she did later.
She was a child, yes, but the sources confirm she was an active participant in supporting the Dutch resistance.
She wasn't passive at all.
Newer research confirms she gave silent dance performances, often in secret, to raise money for the underground.
And there's substantial evidence that she delivered the clandestine underground newspaper, carried messages,
And took food to downed Allied flyers hiding in the woods near Velp.
Her family's home even temporarily harbored a wounded British paratrooper during the Battle of Arnhem. This was incredibly dangerous work for a young person.
And on top of the political violence, there was crippling environmental hardship, the Dutch famine.
The Hunger Winter of 1944-1945. The Germans had intentionally restricted food and fuel supplies as retaliation for Dutch railway strikes.
The desperation from that period it's hard to grasp from a modern perspective. The sources say her family was forced to eat things like tulip bulbs.
Tulip bulbs, yes. They'd process them into a rudimentary flour to bake cakes and biscuits, just trying to get basic carbohydrates to survive. They ate nettles and grass.
The physical toll was just absolute.
Devastating. By the time of the liberation, Audrey was gravely ill. She had jaundice, severe anemia, chronic edema, that's the swelling from lack of protein, and a serious respiratory infection.
All classic signs of chronic malnutrition.
And her life was very likely saved by timely international aid.
Right. The sources say penicillin was acquired with black market money.
Raised by selling thousands of cigarettes sent by a British Army officer. That injection of aid, saving her from starvation-related illness, it must have fundamentally underscored the importance of external relief for her.
So, if we connect this to the bigger picture,
the enduring physical and psychological effects of this 5-year occupation and near starvation, they fundamentally shaped every choice she made after that.
her weak constitution, which would come up later.
It was a literal scar from this period, this experience of needing aid, of being a recipient of global compassion. It provided the foundational motivation for her later philanthropic drives.
The blueprint for her global service was written in Arnhem, not Hollywood.
Precisely.
The immediate post-war period was then marked by this professional heartbreak. She had to abandon her first love, ballet.
She moved with her mother, first to Amsterdam, then London, pursuing rigorous training. She studied under two giants, Somi Gaskell and the renowned Marie Rambert.
But Rambert delivered this painful truth.
She did. Despite recognizing Audrey's immense talent and discipline, Rambert told her that her height, she was unusually tall for a classical dancer, and crucially, the lasting damage to her body from the wartime malnutrition.
Her weak constitution.
Yes. You would stop her from ever becoming a prima ballerina. She was just physically incapable of sustaining the demands of classical ballet at that level.
So that dream was gone.
That dream was unattainable, so she pivoted.
All that discipline was redirected toward acting. She started small, taking chorus girl roles in London's West End musical reviews.
Sauce tartare and sauce picante. She took extensive elocution lessons to refine her voice, to move beyond just being a dancer in the chorus line.
And then came the crucial, almost accidental discovery.
The moment that changed everything. It was 1952. She was filming a small part in a film, Monte Carlo Baby, in Monaco.
And the legendary French novelist Colette happened to see her.
At the Hotel de Paris, of all places, Colette instantly recognized the exact quality she needed, and she insisted on casting her in the title role of the Broadway play adaptation of her novel, Gigi.
And Gigi opened in New York. The play itself got mixed reviews, but Hepburn was an undeniable sensation.
Life magazine called her a hit, and she won a Theatre World Award for the role, confirming her viability as a leading dramatic actress.
This theater success led directly to her Hollywood ascent with Roman Holiday in 1953.
The director, William Wyler, was initially looking at huge names like Elizabeth Taylor for the role of Princess Anne.
But then he saw Hepburn's screen test.
And he was completely swayed. He cast her instead, saying she was charming, innocent, and talented. Absolutely enchanting. She had this unique vulnerability that was perfect for the role.
It was a star-making moment, but it was cemented by her co-star, Gregory Peck.
His foresight and generosity, he insisted she get equal, above the title, billing alongside him.
He said, you got to change that, because she'll be a big star and I'll look like a big jerk.
And he was right. That film delivered extraordinary, almost unimaginable success for a newcomer. She swept the major awards for that single performance.
The Academy Award for Best Actress, a BAFTA, and a Golden Globe.
That trifecta for a first starring role was nearly unprecedented.
And the success wasn't just in cinema that year. Remarkably, in 1954, the same year she was getting her Oscar, she won a Tony Award.
For her work in Ondine on Broadway.
Which achieved this truly rare Oscar-Tony sweep. It established her as an undeniable cross-platform phenomenon.
And Hollywood took immediate notice. She was signed to a 7-picture contract with Paramount.
She then moved immediately to cement that icon status in the mid to late 50s. She got her second Oscar nomination for Sabrina in 1954.
Working alongside two titans, Humphrey Bogart and William Holden, critics just praised her range, the contrast between the transformed chauffeur's daughter in Sabrina and her regal portrayal in Roman Holiday.
And the dynamic on that set was tense.
Bogart initially resented her. Holden became infatuated with her.
But she managed to navigate those ego-driven waters and delivered a sophisticated performance.
Her dance training finally found its proper cinematic expression in the musical Funny Face in 1957.
Right, she performed her own songs and showcased her dance training alongside Fred Astaire.
And it cemented her unique aesthetic profile in cinema.
Then came The Nun Story in 1959. This role as Sister Luke was a serious shift into dramatic acting.
A huge shift. It demanded immense dedication. She committed an entire year to research and preparation.
Meeting with Catholic sisters in Rome to understand the life.
And that commitment paid off critically. She got her 3rd Oscar nomination and her 2nd BAFTA. Variety called it her most demanding film role, and she gives her finest performance. It showed she wouldn't be pigeonholed.
She did take a couple of artistic risks that were less successful.
Green Mansions and her only Western, The Unforgiven.
But then, She landed the role that would define her aesthetic brand forever.
Breakfast at Tiffany's in 1961, the character of Holly Golightly.
A global cultural touchstone.
Even though Truman Capote, the novelist, famously wanted Marilyn Monroe for the role.
He felt Hepburn was too clean for the character he envisioned.
Right, but Hepburn herself found the role challenging. As an introvert playing this dazzling, flighty extrovert, she called it the jazziest of my career.
But the genius of the film is how she reshaped the character.
She injected Holly with this profound vulnerability and longing. She transformed her from a potentially cynical figure into a sympathetic lost girl.
And the public adored it.
Instantly.
Which ensured the film's massive success.
And of course, the style. The little black dress by Givenchy in the opening credits.
It's arguably the single most famous garment in 20th century fashion history.
It became synonymous with accessible, sophisticated glamour.
Her next massive cinematic undertaking was in 1964, and it was certainly contentious. My Fair Lady.
The debate was very public. Producer Jack L. Warner bypassed Julie Andrews, who had originated the role on stage.
Purely because Hepburn was deemed more bankable for film audiences, a commercial calculation.
And this decision created a firestorm, compounded by the vocal controversy.
Right. Despite lengthy vocal preparation, roughly 90% of her singing was ultimately dubbed by Marni Nixon.
Hepburn was reportedly deeply hurt by that. She was. She briefly walked off the set. She later admitted a profound regret, saying she never should have accepted the role, knowing her singing would be mostly replaced.
And the irony is, the film was a massive success, won 8 Oscars. But that controversy cast a shadow over it for her.
It did.
Her late career saw her demonstrate versatility outside of the romantic comedy genre. In 1967, she starred in the thriller Wait Until Dark.
Playing Susie Hendricks, a terrorized blind woman, this film demonstrated an entirely new, raw, dramatic range and earned her a 5th competitive Oscar nomination.
It was a highly pressurized, difficult film to make.
And it was produced by her husband at the time, Mel Ferrer, during the visible, stressful breakdown of their marriage.
Right, which adds this whole other layer of personal difficulty to an already challenging role.
It does.
That brings us squarely to her private life, which was characterized by this deep desire for peace and a cycle of complex relationships.
Her first marriage to Mel Ferrer began in 1954 and lasted until 1968. They had one son, Sean Hepburn Ferrer.
But the emotional toll of building a family was immense. She had 2 miscarriages before Sean's birth.
Including one at 6 months while filming The Unforgiven, which is just devastating to think about.
This period really underlines her intense desire for stability. It fueled her search for privacy.
And her move to La Paisible, the peaceful place in Tolochenaz, Switzerland. She was seeking refuge from the Hollywood spotlight.
Crucially, she deliberately chose the non-German-speaking region,
consciously avoiding the language and cultural landscape that evoked the traumatic memories of her wartime childhood.
Her second marriage was to Italian psychiatrist Andrea Dotti from 1969 to 1982.
They had one son, Luca Andrea Dotti. She suffered another miscarriage in 1974.
That marriage ultimately crumbled.
Under the strain of celebrity, distance, and infidelity on both sides, though the separation was long and protracted.
It really speaks to her persistent need for that foundational stability that she was denied as a child.
Which she finally found in her final relationship with Dutch actor Robert Wolders.
It began in 1980 and lasted until her death in 1993. She considered them married in spirit, didn't she?
She did. She said the years spent with him were truly the happiest and most peaceful of her life.
Her film career effectively concluded around that time with a cameo in Spielberg's Always in 1989.
Which set the stage for the massive transition to humanitarian work. And by her own explicit account, it was motivated by a profound, lifetime sense of gratitude.
She'd quietly contributed to UNICEF since 1954, but her appointment as a Goodwill Ambassador in 1989 transformed her focus entirely.
This wasn't a side project. It became her primary, all-consuming professional focus. She felt this explicit, moral imperative to repay the international aid she'd received as a starving child.
It was a debt of survival she intended to pay forward.
Exactly.
And this was absolutely not ceremonial work. She fully committed to difficult field missions that exposed her to the most brutal realities.
Her first major mission was to Ethiopia in 1988, which was reeling from chronic famine and civil war.
The specifics are harrowing. She visited an orphanage in Bakio with 500 starving children. Her reaction was intense.
She said, "I have a broken heart. I feel desperate. The largest part of humanity is suffering. This was the elegance of Hollywood confronting the terrifying reality of the human condition.
Then in August '88, she went to Turkey for an immunization campaign. And this trip highlighted success.
Right. She actively looked for solutions. She noted how effectively the campaign was executed. She said, "The army gave us their trucks. The fishmongers gave their wagons for the vaccines. It took 10 days to vaccinate the whole country. Not bad."
She was learning the logistics of effective aid delivery.
She was. Then came Sudan in 1989 as part of Operation Lifeline. This mission forced her to deliver a stark message.
That these were not natural disasters.
No, they were man-made tragedies for which there's only one man-made solution: peace. Food aid had been weaponized.
Her trip to Bangladesh in October '89 resulted in this anecdote that just captures her compassion. A UN photographer called her the Pied Piper.
Because she immediately embraced children covered in flies and suffering without any hesitation or visible revulsion.
She saw the child she once was.
Reflected in their faces, it was an immediate, compassionate connection.
Her final mission was perhaps the most emotionally draining. September 1992, just months before her death. She went to Somalia.
She called the scene apocalyptic.
She admitted the scale of suffering there surpassed everything she had witnessed before.
"I have seen famine in Ethiopia and Bangladesh, but I have seen nothing like this, so much worse than I could possibly have imagined. I wasn't prepared for this."
But she still held on to hope, recognizing the universal tragedy of the children.
Their enlarged bellies, their sad eyes, their wise faces that show the suffering, all the suffering they have endured in their short years.
And shortly after returning from that trip to Somalia, she began suffering severe abdominal pain.
In November 1992, a procedure in Los Angeles revealed the terrible diagnosis: pseudomyxoma peritoni, a rare form of abdominal cancer.
It had been growing slowly and had metastasized.
The diagnosis was terminal.
Her final journey home to Switzerland for her last Christmas it's incredibly touching. Her friend, the designer, Hubert de Givenchy, arranged for a private jet.
A jet which he had filled with thousands of flowers to fly her home to Tolosha.
She passed away peacefully in her sleep on January 20, 1993. She was 63.
The tributes were immediate and profound. Gregory Peck, the man who insisted on her equal billing almost 40 years earlier.
He delivered a tearful eulogy reciting the poem Unending Love by Rabindranath Tagore.
A fitting tribute.
Her humanitarian efforts ensured her legacy was cemented outside of cinema. She received the Presidential Medal of Freedom in '92.
And the Academy posthumously gave her the Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Award in 1993. UNICEF honored her with a statue, the Spirit of Audrey, at their New York headquarters.
It is truly remarkable that her final posthumous achievement was completing her competitive EGOT with that Grammy Award.
For Best Spoken Word Album for Children, it's a fitting symmetry that her final competitive award was for using her voice to bring joy to children, reflecting the focus of her final years.
Moving on to her enduring cultural impact, we have to analyze how she transcended her roles to become this true style icon.
Absolutely. When she rose to stardom with Roman Holiday and Sabrina, she offered a feminine ideal that was a distinct departure from the prevailing Hollywood aesthetic.
She stood in direct contrast to the overtly sexualized, curvy figures of contemporaries like Marilyn Monroe.
Or Elizabeth Taylor. Her look, the gamine haircut, the thick eyebrows, the incredibly slim figure was one that women found far easier to emulate.
She popularized minimalism, simple silhouettes, monochromatic colors, and the plain black leggings and capri pants of the late 50s.
The fashion photographer Cecil Beaton called her the public embodiment of our new feminine ideal.
And you can't discuss her style without analyzing that symbiotic, decades-long partnership with Hubert de Givenchy.
No, you can't. He was first hired for Sabrina in '54, but the initial meeting, he famously mistook her for Katharine Hepburn.
Right, but that awkwardness quickly dissolved into a lifelong friendship and an unparalleled creative collaboration.
Givenchy became her official costume designer. He created her clothes on screen, the iconic little black dress, the gowns in charade, and designed her off-screen private wardrobe.
She became his muse.
And he became her tailor of choice.
The enduring saleability of her image today speaks volumes.
It does. Her likeness is still used commercially worldwide. Gap commercials, Galaxy chocolate, Kirin black tea in Japan.
Her image just projects timeless class and sophistication. That timelessness is something her family has worked diligently to manage, though navigating that legacy has proven challenging.
Right. Her two sons, Sean Hepburn Ferrer and Luca Dotti, have been instrumental in honoring her memory through things like the Audrey Hepburn Children's Fund.
However, the sources detail a legal conflict in the late 2010s between Sean Ferrer and the fund over trademark and likeness usage.
It highlights the immense difficulty of managing a public legacy that is both a commercial brand and a charitable mission. The courts had to step in, which I think raises an important question for us to conclude with. Given her powerful, undeniable connection between personal wartime suffering, eating tulip bulbs, facing starvation, and her intense, hands-on commitment to global anti-poverty work decades later, we have to consider how her initial trauma ultimately became the psychological foundation for her greatest achievement outside of film.
It's a powerful thought. She achieved global fame playing characters of fantasy and romance. The runaway princess, the stylish New York socialite.
But her final role as a humanitarian ambassador, traveling to Ethiopia, Sudan, and Somalia, was terrifyingly real. It was a direct reflection of the suffering she personally experienced and survived.
Her early life dictated her choices in the end.
The child who was literally saved by international aid became the adult determined to save other children facing similar existential crises. It's a remarkable, unified narrative of suffering turned into purpose.
We've covered her aristocratic roots, the chilling political affiliations of her parents, the defining trauma of World War II, her dazzling career ascent from Broadway to her competitive ego status, and the monumental, deeply personal work she undertook as a Goodwill Ambassador for UNICEF. We have tracked Audrey Hepburn's journey from beginning to end, from vulnerable child survivor to global champion for children. Thanks for listening.